The conversation wasn't meant for human ears. It was meant for the baby monitor. The nursery was empty. My grandson was spending the weekend with my daughter, but the monitor was still plugged in, still connected, still broadcasting every sound in the upstairs bedroom. I discovered that by complete accident. My name is Victor Ashcroft. I'm 72 years old. For 46 years, I restored antique clocks, not sold them, rested them. Every clock that arrived in my workshop carried two stories, the one people told me, and the one hidden inside its gears. The second story was always the important one. I should have remembered that about people. That Saturday, I was looking for the television remote. Instead, I picked up the wrong device, the baby monitor. I almost switched it off. Then I heard my daughter-in-law laughing. She and my son were upstairs, completely unaware anyone could hear them. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was trying to find the power button. Then, my name came up, so I stopped moving. Melissa sighed. Did his attorney finally send the new will? Ryan answered casually. Not yet. What if he changes it again? He won't. A drawer slammed shut, then my son laughed, not loudly, just confidently. He won't live long enough for it to matter anyway. Silence, then Melissa laughed too. Not nervous laughter, comfortable laughter. Like two people discussing tomorrow's weather. My thumb froze over the power button, Ryan continued. The doctors already told him to slow down. He still works, he still drives, he still thinks he's got 20 years. Melissa asked, what if he actually does? Ryan answered without hesitation. Then we'll just have to wait. Another laugh. Then footsteps. The conversation ended, but mine had just begun. I didn't confront them because I wasn't shocked by greed. I was shocked by certainty. Ryan wasn't hoping I'd die. He had already rearranged his future. Around my absence, that interested me very much. 3 months earlier, I'd sold my workshop, not because I needed money, because arthritis had finally beaten my hands. 46 years repairing clocks, thousands of delicate springs, tiny brass gears eventually. Your fingers stop listening. The sale had been successful, very successful. People assumed that was why everyone suddenly became interested in my health. Neighbors, relatives. Even Ryan started inviting me to dinner every Sunday. I thought, perhaps retirement had brought us closer. Now I knew better. On Monday morning, I drove somewhere Ryan never expected. Not to my lawyer, not to the bank. I drove to the old train station. It had closed 15 years earlier. Broken windows, weeds growing between the tracks. Most people saw an abandoned building. I saw my father's last promise when I was 12. My father had worked there as station master before he died. He placed an old brass pocket watch into my hand. He said, Victor, one day you'll know exactly what this station is supposed to become. For 60 years, I never understood what he meant until I retired. The city had quietly listed the station for sale. Nobody wanted it. Too old, too expensive, too much history. I walked through the empty waiting hall. Sunlight spilled through cracked stained glass. The giant station clock, frozen at 4:17. I smiled for the first time since hearing Ryan's voice on that monitor. I wasn't thinking about my will. I was thinking about time. Real time, the kind you spend, not inherit. As I stood beneath that silent clock, a young woman wearing a construction helmet approached. Mr. Ashcroft? I nodded. I'm Elena, historic restoration architect. She handed me a rolled-up blueprint. I've been waiting 6 months for your decision. I slowly opened the drawings. The abandoned station transformed into something extraordinary. A public workshop, clock museum, apprenticeship center, free classrooms, a place where forgotten crafts could survive another generation. Not a business, a legacy. I looked around the empty station again. Ryan thought my future was measured in how much money I'd leave behind. He never imagined I'd started measuring it in how much life I could still build. And before he ever discovered what happened to my will, he was going to watch every assumption he'd quietly built his future upon stop at exactly 4:17. I didn't buy the station, not immediately. I bought the clock, just the clock. The city manager thought I was joking. You want the building? No, I want the mechanism above the entrance. He blinked. Just the clock? Just the clock, he shrugged. If you can get it down safely, it's yours. 3 retired railway workers helped me remove it. It took 9 hours. The mechanism weighed nearly 400 pounds. Every gear was covered in rust. Every spring was frozen. But the old clock wasn't dead. It was simply waiting for someone patient enough to listen. Ryan visited that evening for the first time in months. He arrived without calling. "Dad, I heard you were downtown." "I was." "What were you doing?" "Buying time." He laughed. "I mean, seriously?" "So do I." He looked confused, then noticed grease on my hands. "You've been working?" "A little. I thought the arthritis hurts." "It does, but pain and purpose don't always travel together." He didn't understand. He wasn't supposed to. The following week, I hired 6 apprentices, not experienced clockmakers. There weren't enough left. I hired teenagers, a mechanic, a violin repair student, a woman who restored antique cameras, people with steady hands, curious minds. No one asked how much they would earn. They asked, "What are we saving?" Exactly the question I'd hoped to hear. Every morning, the station came alive. Old wooden benches were sanded, broken stained glass carefully catalogued, railway signs cleaned, clock parts labeled one by one. Local newspapers started visiting, then history magazines soon. Schools asked if students could tour the restoration. Children stood staring at giant gears taller than they were, watching history breathe again. Ryan wasn't interested until television arrived. One Saturday, a regional documentary crew interviewed me. Nothing dramatic. They wanted to film the restoration. Someone asked, "Why spend your retirement rebuilding an abandoned train station?" I smiled. Because abandoned things aren't always finished. The interview aired Sunday evening. Monday morning, Ryan called before breakfast. "Dad, I didn't know this project was so big. I didn't tell many people." "You should have. We could help." We interesting word. He hadn't touched a screwdriver in 20 years. Now suddenly, there was a we. 2 days later, Melissa arrived carrying homemade pie. She hadn't baked for me since before the workshop sold. I thought the volunteers might like something sweet. They probably would. She looked around the station, workers everywhere, architects, students, engineers, journalists taking photographs. Then she asked casually, "How much is this whole project costing?" I smiled. "I haven't added it up. You should. It sounds expensive." "It is." Her eyes sparkled, not with excitement, with arithmetic. That afternoon, Elena quietly joined me on the platform. "You noticed?" I noticed. "What?" "They stopped asking how you feel. They've started asking how much you're spending." She wasn't wrong. Not once had Ryan asked whether climbing ladders hurt my hands. Not once had Melissa asked whether I needed help. Only budgets, contracts, costs, money, always money. 3 weeks later, a courier delivered a thick envelope, not from my attorney, from the National Railway Heritage Foundation. Inside, a single letter. They wanted to feature Ashcroft Station as the centerpiece of a nationwide preservation initiative. If approved, the station would become a permanent educational landmark, protected, independently funded, unable to be sold or inherited. I read the letter twice, then smiled, because suddenly I understood why my father had given me that pocket watch. He'd never intended me to leave behind wealth. He'd intended me to leave behind time, time that other people could still walk into. Long after I was gone, and somewhere across town, my son was still wondering. When I planned to update my will, he had absolutely no idea. I was about to make the entire question meaningless. The letter from the National Railway Heritage Foundation never mentioned money. Not once. It talked about education, craftsmanship, preservation, public access, exactly the sort of document Ryan would never bother reading. He only wanted the last page, the one with numbers. Unfortunately for him, there weren't any. A week later, the station hosted its first open workshop. Not an opening ceremony, just an invitation. Come see history being repaired. Children built simple wooden clock faces. Retired machinists taught teenagers how to polish brass gears. A violin maker explained why patience matters more than talent. Nobody paid admission. Nobody bought tickets. People simply came, stayed, learned, loved the building that had once echoed with departing trains, now echoed with conversations. Around noon, Ryan arrived, donned sunglasses, expensive watch, perfect smile. He hugged me in front of everyone, long enough for photographers to notice. "Dad, I'm proud of you." Interesting, the last time he'd hugged me, his workshop still existed. Now cameras existed. He walked beside me through the station. "Business looks incredible." "It isn't a business. You know what I mean?" "I do." He kept looking around, scanning, estimating, every restored room, every new window, every volunteer. Finally, there it was. So, who owns all this? I answered honestly. That's changing. He smiled. I figured. I knew you'd eventually put everything together. He wasn't talking about restoration, he was talking about inheritance. That afternoon, the mayor arrived, along with representatives from 3 neighboring towns. They gathered around the old station clock, now beautifully restored, its hands finally moving again. For the first time in 43 years. It chimed, the entire station stopped. People applauded. Some older visitors actually cried. One retired conductor whispered, "I never thought I'd hear that bell again." I looked at the clock, then at my father's old pocket watch. Both were keeping perfect time. The mayor stepped forward. "We've decided something." I hadn't expected another announcement, neither had Elena. The Ashcroft Station Restoration Project has become larger than one family. It now belongs to the region. Applause filled the hall. Then he handed me a leather folder. Inside, a charter signed by 6 towns, 3 historical societies, 2 universities, the National Railway Heritage Foundation. Ashcroft Station would become an independent public trust, governed forever by educators, craftsmen, historians, students, never by descendants, never by inheritance, never by sale. Ryan's smile disappeared almost instantly. He quietly pulled me aside. "What does this mean?" "It means the station can never belong to one person. What about your investment? It belongs here. What about the property? It belongs here. What about everything you're putting into it? It belongs right here." He stared at me. "But what about us?" I looked at him carefully. It was the first time he'd used that word without sounding convincing. I reached into my coat pocket, removed my father's brass pocket watch, placed it in his hand. He looked surprised. "Dad, I thought this was priceless." "It is. You're giving it to me?" I nodded. "No, I'm testing you." He frowned. "What? If you still think that's the most valuable thing I'm leaving behind, then you've learned absolutely nothing." I closed his fingers around the watch, then walked away, leaving him standing alone beneath the station clock, holding something priceless, completely unable to understand its value because the greatest inheritance I'd ever received had never fit inside a will, and the greatest inheritance I would ever leave never would either. Ryan didn't call for 11 days, not because he was thinking, because he was searching, meeching public records, .founcil websites, deportee databases, trying to find the document that would tell him where everything had gone. There wasn't one, because nothing had gone anywhere. It had simply stopped belonging to a family. The station officially reopened the following spring, not with fireworks, not with speeches, with a train whistle. The city borrowed a restored steam locomotive from a transportation museum. Children lined the platform waving little paper flags. Former railway workers wore their original uniforms. Old station masters returned carrying pocket watches they'd kept for 40 years. History didn't arrive, it came home. I was standing near platform 1 when Elena walked beside me. "You're smiling." "I am. I haven't seen you smile like that." I finally stopped building something for people who expected it and started building it for people who'll protect it. She nodded. "Your father would have liked today." I looked toward the station clock. He planned today. I just arrived late. That afternoon, Ryan appeared. No expensive suit, no polished shoes, just jeans covered in dust. He looked tired, not physically, emotionally. He carried the brass pocket watch I'd given him, still wrapped in the cloth I'd folded around it. "I found something." I smiled. "What?" He carefully opened the watch. Inside the back cover, he'd discovered an engraving, one I'd never shown him. It read, "Time is borrowed, purpose is earned." He looked at me. "I never noticed." "I know. I never even opened it." "I know." He swallowed hard. "I spent my whole life waiting for what you'd leave me, and I never bothered asking what someone once left you." For the first time, I believed every word, not because he cried, because he wasn't asking for anything. He reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. "I brought this." I opened it. Inside was a resignation letter. He'd resigned from the investment firm where he'd worked for 19 years. I looked at him. "Why?" "I don't want to spend the next 20 years helping people collect things they'll never appreciate." He laughed quietly. "I'd rather help fix clocks." I laughed too. For terrible pay? For meaningful work? That's different. It is. I never promised him a position. Instead, I handed him a broom. The workshop opens in 15 minutes. The floors need sweeping. He smiled. That's it? That's how every apprentice starts. For the first time since he was 16, my son worked beside people who had no idea he was related to me. They judged him by punctuality, patience, effort, not his last name, exactly as it should be. 5 years later, Ashcroft Station had become one of the most visited historical education centers in the state. Thousands of children learned forgotten crafts there. Veterans taught engineering. Retired watchmakers trained teenagers. Artists restored century-old clocks. Nothing inside the station carried my family name, except one object, the old brass station clock, mounted above the entrance. Beneath it, a small bronze plaque, not about me, not about Ryan, not about money. It simply read, "Some people leave fortunes, others leave time." The second gift lasts longer. Every afternoon, at exactly 4:07, the great station clock plays a short melody. Visitors always ask why. The guides smile. That's when the station stopped waiting and started living again. Most never realize it was also the exact moment a father stopped measuring his life by what his son expected to inherit and started measuring it by what complete strangers would still be grateful for, long after both of them were gone.